Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Have you ever seen things humans probably shouldn't see? Hey/X/, I come to you with this question along with a pretty long story. If you don't have the time, it's along these lines. Went into moderately dark places, started screwing with my own perception ever since. Got the feeling I gazed a bit too far into the void a few times. Now, for the whole story, I'll have to tell you a few bits and pieces of my life. Knowing myself, it'll probably be all over the place, but I'll try keeping things concise and structured nonetheless. I'll begin with my childhood. It's basically the most important part of your life as far as psychology is concerned, right? What I recall of my childhood is just weird. Like I've been MK Ultra'd my whole youth and just recently have been made whole again. Kinda, we'll get back to that. It just feels like these years don't even belong to me. Of course, you could say I'm factually a different person than who I was in the past, and compression of far-off memories sometimes clashes with your in-the-moment time perception when you remember them. Maybe I just grew up. However, I'll say a few things I think are important to understand my way of thinking. I come from a seemingly pretty normal family, and from an outsider's eye, pretty uneventful. No drunk wife beating or serious mental issues and the like. Only a tumultuous relationship between my mother and older sister, and being quite isolated from other relatives. Yet I've come to realize in recent years dynamics that insidiously cultivated my personal demons. Still not saying I was psychologically abused in my childhood. Only that environment and bad shots at parenting messed me up a bit without really realizing. What I mean by that is social isolation seen as the norm, an emotionally distant dad who kept burying himself under work to cope with things, basically castrated by his wife. Said wife and mother, absolutely oblivious of others, professional guilt tripper, emotional vampire, and with the emotional maturity of a 14 years old. A mother who thought her job was over at the moment me and my sisters were around 8, and let us keep to ourselves from that point. Yet she never worked and was constantly at home, and kept blaming us for not nurturing ourselves. Same mother who admitted recently, like it was the most normal thing ever, she never wanted kids, and only made us because of my dad. When I was around 6 or so, I kept having the same nightmare all over again. It's the only nightmare I ever made and identified as such, and it keeps haunting me to this day. I wake up in the middle of the night and everything feels off. I tried switching on my bedside lamp and it didn't work. I get up and try switching on every light I come across in the house. Still nothing. There is no light, but I realize everything is tainted in that reddish hue, and the light keeps going down and down. I can still see, but the light won't stop fading, like that auditory illusion where the tone keeps going down seemingly infinitely. I go to my parents' bedroom and it's empty. I start calling them, wandering around the whole house to no avail. I go to the front door and unlock it. Beyond that point, absolute pure darkness. A Vantablack rectangle drawn in the wall. I feel something calling out to me out there, and start feeling the worst thing possible. Like I'm frozen in place and being killed again and again and again in ever worse fashions. Then I wake up in a cold sweat and switch on my lamp. It won't work. Me, a 6-year-old child, kept looping in this nightmare, terror progressing as it increments, like it was some cursed psychedelic bad trip. It iterated as much as 5 or 6 times per night, then just stopped abruptly one day. Also that nightmarish dream where I'm being abandoned in the forest and wolves come at me. But I realize they're not evil and pet them. Didn't have lots of friends, was bullied through elementary and middle school until I fought back. No passion, no kiddie dream job, yada yada. Childhood TLDR felt like I was being gaslighted at home and was a soulless wage cuck the rest of the time. I don't recall a single event, a single action worth of pride or nostalgia until my late adolescence. Fast forward to high school. One summer where I've played the whole Mass Effect trilogy and felt everything I just couldn't feel in real life. Replayed 3 times in a row. Broken emotionally, crying myself to sleep every night. Terribly frustrated by what I just lived by proxy, knowing I had nothing of that in reality. Kinda a depressive period for 2 years where I semi-consciously alienated myself from others, sleeping on the fact I had wonderful people all around me and the opportunity to bond with them. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I took a year off to explore things. Didn't explore anything, instead fell into crippling depression. Being all alone, drinking my ass off while watching anime, writing and making videos about this kind of consumer obsession, convincing myself it was a decent way out. Spoiler alert, it's not. Then my dad died before my very eyes. It all happened live. I couldn't be in denial even if I wanted to. Felt basically nothing but being tired of all this. Didn't cry. Not scared one bit by the now very real reality of death. Source of income gone and prospects of going to college along with it. Mother going from emotionally manipulative to downright insane. Starts going tunnel vision about renovating the house to maybe sell it. Spending pension money and common pot on useless stuff. Shamelessly getting her way, acting like the poor widow. Told me I needed to work while she was spending like crazy and not hunting for jobs herself. She's a painter, and decided at this very appropriate time it was her own and only job. Always spending way more than what meager income selling her paintings provided. Since then, she worked like 4 months total, in town hall or school jobs, while I've busted my ass off in supermarkets, fast foods and restaurants. For a while, the only thing I felt was pure, unmitigated anger and hatred. Getting bottles of cheap wine down on a daily basis, thinking it's either that or brutally murdering her, then offing myself. We argued regularly, too. I stopped taking her seriously as a mother, but still was attached to that on an emotional level. So every time she gaslighted me with petty crap, I raised my voice. She started crying and saying I was being unfair to her. I felt guilty, apologized, tried hard to be a good boy for, and while, then rise and repeat. Abusive relationship 101. Applied for one filmmaking school. Got accepted but couldn't pay for it. What's the point of this joke? Got myself a girlfriend for a year and a half, only to realize she was the same kind of emotional vampire. Guilt-tripping, possessive, and egotistical. We all just love finding someone like our parents, don't we? She broke up with me. I was absolutely destroyed. Had nothing left, no future, no love, no nothing. Crippling levels of depression and early stages of psychosis, what's happening to me. Getting into the spicy stuff now. Somewhere in this mess, I started experimenting with psychedelics. First time with 20 mg of 2CB, just funny, and the grass was super green somehow. First LSD trip, 100 micrograms, impressive but pretty uneventful. Second LSD trip, with the same friends as the first, was my first taste of the reality of hell. 250 micrograms, everyone looking forward to the day and prepping it thoroughly. Turns out one friend started thought looping hard. They kept talking about love and such. I should say this. Never once when I've been in altered states with other people, didn't I take the role of the trip sitter, the responsible person, in control. Here I perfectly understood what was happening. The experience was taking a pretty wrong turn and it could end up badly. My other friend tried to open a bottle with a knife, had to take it and throw it under furniture. My looping friend went to pee and started looping about how he drowned the goddamn house in piss, and his father was gonna kill him. My mission was now to prevent them from getting out of the house, calming the situation down and making sure nobody hurt themselves while starting looping myself. So I entered every new iteration knowing the last, knowing I failed to break the circle and knowing what was gonna happen, trapped in this probabilistic hell for a solid 3 hours. 3 hours while bad tripping on LSD feels like way more than that. I somehow succeeded in my mission and everyone calmed down. The worst part comes here. Still under the influence, we just couldn't think about anything, like our minds just shut down and couldn't produce new thoughts. Also, we came to realize later it wasn't LSD but a DOB, which isn't as bad as something like 25 IN Bohm, but lasts for a very, very long time. Behold 3 young adults, trapped by their own minds for a solid 20 hours, only able to think in layers of abstraction without being able to produce a subject to build these abstractions on. That's when I first understood how crafty the mind could be, but I still couldn't call it fear, more like respect for a humbling experience. Did MDMA in an introspective way, realized what feeling alive meant, motivated me to start pursuing that feeling in my sober life. Substances were obviously coping mechanisms, but never got to the point of being an unhealthy obsession. That, in part, got me to stop drinking heavily. I was straight most of the time. Now getting back to the breakup with my then girlfriend. When she spilled it to me, she was at my home. We were in a long-distance relationship, and she didn't want to come only to say it, then go back. So she stayed the whole week. A whole week with her, still sleeping in the same bed watching movies and what have you. I kid you not. I could vividly feel a bad taste in my mouth the whole time. I planned to see my best friends for New Year's Eve just after. And like the absolute bros they were and still are, they were here to stitch back the pieces together a bit. Thing is, I was supposed to take LSD for the first time after the famed house drowning in piss bad trip, and they were supposed to trip sit me. I insisted I still wanted to go along with this plan. I thought, surely this will slap me. Surely it's the wake-up call I need right now to trigger my lizard brain into self-terminating artificially, instead of self-terminating, period. End result. I just felt the psychedelic, amped-up version of that bad taste for a few hours. Going crazy for a month or two. Took 30-ish mg of 2CB, baby's first ego death. Somehow I fought off madness, focusing hard on my entrance exam for yet another film school, public and free but pretty selective this time. Didn't pass. What's the point in life anymore? Best friend told me why not rent an apartment together. Still one point in life, I guess. That's it, but I can't come to find a job and debt is racking up. A few other issues, long story short. My best friend tells me to just leave and go back to my family. Felt fear and pain for the first time in a very, very long time. Went back to live with my older sister because my mother wouldn't take me back. Too busy having an adolescent love story with a divorcing man with kids. Now my older sister is a single mom, hates my mother with all her guts, but doesn't realize she's becoming an even worse version of her. Angry and accusing people all the time, condescending because she's 16 years older than me, verbally and physically abusing my nephew. Works in a wagey retail job, yet has a decent salary, dilapidated everything in petty crap, then goes postal about how life is unfair because she's $600 in the red with a kid. Someday my brother-in-law, partner of my other big sis, comes to me about finding a job and helping me through, but in a very dry and pushy way. Right now I don't blame him. Pretty much the opposite. He's the kind of dude working 60 hours a week with a family and side hobbies. I have much respect for that, and am pretty grateful he took the time to shake me up a bit. Now, I wasn't exactly in a go-getter mindset at the time. I was just sitting there, derealizing, escaping my situation in video making. I actually started hunting for jobs, and got unreasonably angry at what he had to say. Scared I was going to be controlled by my family again, in truth. And spurged in my sister's messages while she was out working. Her answer was along the lines of, "We're getting tired of your crap and you should just pack up and leave." Second time I felt fear in a long time. I basically was hyperventilating around the house, getting my things ready, texting everyone in my contacts while the cats were bewildered watching me. I stooped as low as calling my mother on the brink of crying, asking her to take me back. She was like, "I want to butt," to which I shouted repeatedly, "If you don't want to, just be honest to me and yourself and say so clearly." It obviously went nowhere and I hung up. I haven't gone through such a display of weakness a single time since then. I'm now calmly browsing, researching the different ways given to off myself once and for all. Sister comes back, castration time, I'm not homeless. A switch fires up instantly and permanently in my brain. I get myself together, find a job, work 50 hours a week and work hard on my free time on video making and pointless stuff like that. Now sleeping 5 to 6 hours per night, tops, constantly on speed and caffeine. In my eagerness, I became the de facto assistant manager at my restaurant. The main manager is inept, and bosses are clearly implying she's not up for her role and wants to train me for the future. They're also talking about my colleagues in a manipulative kind of way. A executes just fine, but we can't let her decide things, can we? B is a good cook, but nothing more, you know what I mean. Thing is, they tried to include me in it, and they, in a sense, were right to do so, because I perfectly knew what they meant. Their little politics, their petty social engineering, their attempts at gaslighting us. I actually was pretty good at this, and it half worried me. In the end, I got tired of it, playing sabotage by telling things to the right people and not telling them to the wrong ones. Instigated discontent against the bosses among the team, gave everyone the idea it was our restaurant, not theirs. Well, they didn't pay us the heavy overtime work we did while expecting us to be superhumans, so they had it coming. My little show culminated with me throwing the apron in the middle of the restaurant in a very theatrical way, then getting out to never come back. It just felt good. Fun, liberating, and exciting. And it felt like it wasn't what I was supposed to think in this situation. Years of internalized culpability and self-loathing can be a bitch sometimes. Anyhow, a month or so, and I just can't stand living in my sister's living room. In the meantime, I resumed contact with my best friend. He felt guilty. I felt guilty. The whole situation was dumb, and we didn't want to lose one another. Everything sorted out. Plans for vacation with our common friends, whom I hadn't seen since the whole thing, came up. So I spend a week with them, and my best friend comes out spontaneously with the idea of me coming back to live with him. My door is open, he says. So now the plan is to stay for a month or so. See if I could find a job, then stay if I did. I found one in 5 days, and life has worked out great between the two of us ever since. Pretty good, right? Yeah, it really is. I like my life, like my close ones, have a ton of ambitions for the future, and don't want to in hero. Now comes the spiciest part. During said week, I took 300 micrograms of LSD along with my best friend. It started off pretty great for me. Ego death like hell and pretty interesting soul-searching. I get out of my bed and come to see how it's going for everyone, and stumble into some abstract circle of hell. Trip sitter is piss drunk, best friend is mildly bad tripping. At this point, I'm in full mentalist mode. I pick up on the smallest of body signals or vibes. I just know everything about what's unfolding, get how everyone is feeling. Only person I don't find alienating is the host friend, stuck in his bed with a headache for most of the night. At this point, I decide it's not my hill to die on and decide to go back to my bed. Did my thing with ego dissolution, went well. I just couldn't care less. I just couldn't feel affected or stressed by what was happening. Next day felt like a weird migraine contaminated everyone in the room, and it was making me feel I was going crazy. So I just left the house to go on a walk the whole day with the friend hosting us. Came back to my sister's home. She went on vacation with her son and my other sister. I was left alone here. Things started to feel weird. I had been messing way too much with stimulants and sleep deprivation. I somehow get the idea that taking 2CB along with ketamine would be a good idea. News from work comes up. I have to go fetch some papers, which I do. Whole day just feels weird. I come back home, drop 32 mg of 2CB, and start watching Koyaanisqatsi. An hour and a half in, and I still can't feel anything. I get up to take the K, make this fat-ass line, and snort it in one go. I get up again and feel very lightheaded. I can feel my consciousness fading as I resume the movie. From this point, only disincarnated visions for incomprehensible times. I'm not myself anymore, but not the same way I got used to with ego death. I didn't become a concept, the whole universe, you name it. I just wasn't. Only this weird echo of an unknown country road crushed under an apocalyptic sun. Choking, unbearable, alienating, blinding ball of otherworldly, malevolent light. Unknown end of road, hatred for the sun, invasive feeling or frustration and disgust. Knowledge of something out of the world, something that should not be known, let alone gazed upon by the living. I came back to consciousness thanks to the cats calling out to me, greeted by a humongous pool of vomit. Survival mode kicked in, cleaned up, took a shower, and went to sleep. I only felt scared the day after, and couldn't feel sane until I met up with a friend and told him everything. Maybe I just got bamboozled by an apocalyptic class K-hole, but it sure didn't feel like it. It felt like some weird DMT mystic revelation or near-death experience. I stopped taking psychedelics ever since, and take more care of myself. As I said, I enjoy life and don't feel like I'm slowly going full schizo. Only thing is, I've since then felt subtle changes in my life. I don't feel fear or stress or surprise or real hatred anymore. But I can't bring myself to feel love wholeheartedly, like I know I could while I was with my ex. I call things coming with even greater accuracy than before, but I almost always wish I had it wrong. I can understand to a greater extent when I'm following the wrong path, but that doesn't mean I'm convinced about the right one either. I understand people like never before, but it just makes me feel really alone. I could see myself relapsing in depression one way or another, was it not for my wonderful friends. I'm backtracking a little bit. Remember my father? Well, while he's clearly dead in my conscious mind, he's still here in my dreams. There's this event my big but not biggest sis told me about how her 4-year-old daughter told her she talked with Grandpa in her sleep, and how he said he's angry he died and had to leave her to see my mother and my brother-in-law. Generally, I would have thought nothing of it. But the thing is, my niece said things about my dad she just couldn't know. Things we never told her, like how my dad loved going to the swimming pool. Then I remembered something else I didn't think nothing of at the moment. Shortly after his death, I had that very vivid dream, which is pretty rare in and of itself for me, where I woke up, went to the bathroom, and heard this little radio we had been emitting while it was turned off. I could clearly hear my dad's voice, but couldn't understand what he was saying. I woke up pretty shaken, but just thought the whole situation was messing with my brain. Since then, I've kept dreaming of him as a very bitter and tired man. Someday, after meditating for a while, I pondered over him and came to the conclusion I wasn't angry with him anymore, that I was at peace with him and will lovingly remember him from now on. I directed these thoughts to him in a way, not in a trying to make contact with him kind of way, but more of a, if he's up there watching, I want him to know he shouldn't worry about me, feel guilty about anything, and just rest at last. 1. This night I saw him as the sometimes aloof and distant yet good and lovely father he always was. Now my phone had discharged during the night and would be late to work if I overslept. I kid you not, exactly 2 or 3 minutes before my alarm would normally ring, I heard my father calling out to me like he did when I was a teenager. It's not because of my circadian clock. At the time, I was working as a cook and never had fixed hours. Along with my dad's presence, I can feel for a while another presence, a malevolent one. Only way I could describe the feeling is my shadow self preying on my doubts and faults, feeding off inaction and insecurity. I recently started making pretty vivid and messed up dreams, like this one where I was vividly bad tripping alone at my parents' house, then waking up with an alien entity talking an esoteric language. Started having mild sleep paralysis when I'm taking a nap during the day. Thing is, I just can't feel fear before those things. I wake up and think, yup, that's what is commonly called a nightmare. Cool. You had a nightmare. I think it's supposed to scare me. Yup, makes for a pretty scary nightmare if you ask me about it. All in cool detachment. Thing that bothers me is, I think about maddening things pretty much all the time and couldn't care less. It doesn't feel different than asking myself if I switched the lights off before going out or any other mundane thing. Am I broken emotionally? Did I really tap into weird Akashic records? Has drug use fried parts of my brain? I probably won't know, and will keep going on with my life nonetheless, striving to heal my past traumas and being a better version of myself. But I think I had to get that out of my system once and for all and reach out to other people, knowing if it's a shared experience. Whole thing is way too long, so I'll stop and just read what you may have to say. Have a nice day, and take good care of yourselves, my friends.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.